to the cloud.
Okay, we are recording. All right, so our speaker today is Koun Franz. Koun Franz was born in Helena, Montana, has spent a good deal of his adult life in Japan. He was ordained in 2001, then trained at Zuioji and Shogoji monasteries. From 2006 to 2010, he served as a resident priest of the Anchorage Zen Community in Alaska. Koun is married to Tracy Franz. Since 2013, they have lived with their 2 kids in Canada, where he leads practice at Sensouji, the home temple of Thousand Harbours Zen. Koun also serves as guiding Kyoshi of Soto Zen North America, the new Soto Zen denomination. Koun's talks with THZ can be found on their podcast. They also have a YouTube channel. And I'll read the Dana statement. In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of Dana Paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting anything in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice Dana is to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunities arise. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a Dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. You can either do this directly or through Great Tree, and we will pass it on to them. So welcome, Koun, and what can we do for your Dana today?
Where can we send it?
Yeah, where can we send your Dana?
Oh, please, if you would just send anything along to the denomination, to Soto Zen North America.
All right, sounds good.
There's information on the website.
All right.
Thank you.
Joe, will you cut original sound off? You gotta go down to the mic, the little arrow down there, and click. I think noise removal.
Is the sound up? Is the volume all the way up?
We should be ready to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. First, thank you for inviting me to do this. We've done this before, but I have to say that now, having visited and been in that room and knowing what it smells like and having met so many of you, it's even more wonderful to get to be here. So thank you. I'm here today in my role as guiding Kyoshi of Soto Zen North America. So I've been speaking to some temples about what it means to be building a denomination. And what I'd like to do is to kind of set the stage for that by talking a little bit about my own understanding of what it is that we do, period. Not just in forming a denomination, but in practicing this tradition as a way of going into what it means to do that all together. So please bear with me for a moment so that I can try to lay out this thing that I find hard to articulate. I've really noticed over the years that, I think like almost everyone, I came to this practice because there was something that I wanted, something that I maybe read in a book, or just that I had in my mind. It had something to do with transforming myself. It had something to do with coming to some deeper understanding or clearer perception of reality. There was some sort of change that I wanted. And I carried that around for a long time, and I worked with that for a long time. And I was always aware, because I was training in Japan and I had teachers in Japan, that what I was looking for wasn't necessarily in alignment with what they were offering. They were seeing this through a slightly different lens. And I've discovered that as I get older and I spend more time in this practice, I think I'm seeing it more and more the way that they saw it and that they were trying to offer to me. And the way that I've been saying that in the simplest terms is that more and more my understanding of what this practice is that we make stuff and then we give it away. So I want to talk about that a little bit, about making stuff and giving it away. And to do that, I went looking for what Dogen might say about making stuff and giving it away. And it took me to this chapter of Shobogenzo called Kuyo Shobutsu. Kuyo means offering. Shobutsu means all the Buddhas or the Buddhas. And the translation that I have translates Kuyo Shobutsu as offerings to Buddhas. But I don't like that. I don't think it is accurate. And that'll be clearer after I read this little section. But Dogen himself makes very clear, even though we may walk up to an altar with a Buddha on it and make an offering, we aren't merely making offerings to Buddhas. We're also making offerings as Buddhas, and we're making offerings with Buddhas. And if we don't understand that, the rest of it won't make a lot of sense. So this is from Kuyo Shobutsu. And this is actually not Dogen, it's him quoting the Lotus Sutra. It says, in the Lotus Sutra, it is said, those who, to stupa shrines, to precious statues and painted images, with reverent thoughts make offerings of flowers and incense, banners and canopies. Those who have others perform music, beating on drums and blowing on horns and conchas, pipes and flutes, playing zithers and harps, lutes, gongs, and cymbals, and all such marvelous sounds as these that they bring as offerings. Or who with joyful minds sing praises of the Buddha's virtues, even for a single small sound, will all have attained the way of the Buddhas. Those with distracted minds, who even with a single flower make offerings to a painted image, will eventually see innumerable Buddhas. Those who pay obeisance or simply join their palms, even raising just a single hand or slightly lowering their heads, thereby making offerings to an image, will eventually see incalculable Buddhas, will themselves attain the unsurpassed way, and everywhere deliver innumerable multitudes. So Dogen is painting this really poetic, really beautiful image of how this practice works. That in going forward to meet Buddha, that we by definition arrive as Buddha. And so he says, even if you just show up with a single flower, even if you just put your hands together, even if it's just one hand, even if you just approach the Buddha and you kind of nod your head, that's Buddha meeting Buddha. That's what we bring. And what I take from that, aside from this incredible depiction of an encounter that we might otherwise see as lopsided or as unknowable, is that he's saying we're qualified. We're qualified to make that offering. We're qualified to offer that flower. We're qualified to offer that gesture as Buddhas. Not just to, but as. And we do this all the time, even if that isn't what we imagine we're doing. There's something that we're creating through our activities, through our words, with our hands even. And then as Buddhas, we're giving that up to all the other Buddhas. Not just the one on the altar, but to all of them, meaning everyone. We do this first with Zazen. There's this admonition, of course, this famous one about, the teacher sees the student sitting in Zazen and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm making a Buddha." And then the teacher starts polishing the tile. And the student says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm making a mirror." We're supposed to understand, we're not supposed to be making a Buddha. We're not supposed to be trying to transform ourselves, which is what I wanted in the beginning. And that's right. What we don't talk about so much is that when we sit in this posture, when we hold our bodies like this and our eyes like this and our hands like this, we're not making a Buddha, but we're making Buddha. We're giving shape to Buddha in this moment. We're making Buddha visible. Someone else walks in and sees that, and they're seeing Buddha breathe. We sit in that place and we feel Buddha breathe. We bring Buddha into the room with our bodies. We do this when we chant. We take these sutras that have been written down and we say them out loud, and when we do, we give them voice so that they are alive in this moment, so that the teachings are being taught in this moment, not merely recited, but offered. It's not just a book. It's not just something on the page. We all, as Buddhas, are teaching these things, even if, or maybe even when, we ourselves don't fully understand what we're saying. Because we're always trying to figure that part out. And yet we still are able to step forward. We're still able to put those teachings into the world, using our bodies, using our voices. And then I have a favorite one, or one that I come back to so often, which is the sewing of the robe. And I think there are a number of people on this call who have had this experience of either sewing a rakusu or sewing a kesa, who have been part of one of those projects. And fundamental to that practice is the idea that when we sew the robe, we aren't sewing a robe. I'm not sewing my robe or your robe. It's that this robe is the Buddha's robe. That ultimately there's just this one robe. And this is it. But the one that Teijo is wearing is also it. The one Genjo is wearing is it. The one that Rakusu, the Daisho, has on is it. This is not a facsimile of the thing, it is the thing. And so when we look upon it, we are looking upon Buddha's robe, and when we touch it, we are touching Buddha's robe. And when we sew it, we are the ones who are qualified to make that robe and to bring that robe into the world again. There's a wonderful book, and I'm blanking on the name, by Pamela Winfield, where she speaks about, she's comparing Dogen's vision of art, in a sense, with Kukai's, who is another important figure in Japanese Buddhism. And in that book, Pamela Winfield uses this term that I had never heard before, which is, she refers to Dogen's view of the practice as being holochronic. That when we do something like put on the robe, we are putting on the robe with all Buddhas throughout space and time. That it's simultaneous. It's simultaneous with the historical Buddha. It's simultaneous with Dogen. It's simultaneous with our own teachers' teachers. And it is simultaneous with everyone who is going to come after us. Because there's just the one. And that robe permeates time. The teachings permeate time. Zazen permeates time. So when we choose to make that offering, when we make the thing, when we give it shape and voice and texture, and then we put it out into the world, we're not just putting it out into the world right now. We're putting it out into the world always, from beginningless time. All of this is to say that what we're doing here in this practice that so often looks like just kind of going into a room and sitting down on a cushion and looking at a wall, or maybe signing into Zoom and sitting on a cushion and facing a wall. Is actually something that is, in its scale, immeasurably huge. not only is it immeasurably huge, by definition, we can't do it alone. We can't. And I want to pause for a second because I've given a few of these talks, and I've been showing up with this thing about how we make stuff and we give it away. And I've been enjoying talking about that and kind of chewing on that. And it was starting to feel really like, oh, this is pretty good. This is a pretty good formulation for what we do. And then a couple of weeks ago, I was in Cedar Rapids and I was part of a precept ceremony there. And in the middle of the ceremony, I'm watching people who are on their knees and they're receiving the rakusu and they're saying yes to so much. And I realized there's a part of this, there's another step, or there's another factor that I think is important to say out loud, which is the saying yes. We say yes in this practice. To take up the bodhisattva path, to live as a bodhisattva, to present as a Buddha in the world is not something that is limited to Soto Zen. It's not limited to Buddhism. You probably all know someone who is a bodhisattva who has no knowledge of Buddhism at all. But we come here and we take up this practice as the support, as the map, as the path for walking that bodhisattva path. And so we say yes to these teachings, we say yes to this tradition, we say yes to the form of it. We say yes to the precepts. We agree to take it on in a particular way so that we can find the depth of that particular way. And so we have this kind of process, this looping all the time. There is something that we say yes to. And in the simplest terms, we say yes to Buddha and we say yes to Dharma. And in the context of saying yes to Buddha and Dharma, we make Sangha. And then as Sangha, we make Buddha and we make Dharma and we give it away. And we do this constantly, like breathing in and out. We do this our whole lives. This saying yes and this giving shape and this letting go. It's beautiful. We do it at first maybe in a way that feels solitary. And then maybe we come to a Sangha and we find that there are other people who want to do this with us. And we have there's all the joy of that, and there's also all the complexity of that. Because some people in that room inspire us, and some people in that room rub us the wrong way. And now it's a little bit, sometimes it's difficult, but also it's motivating. We need that. But where I want to go with this is to point out that there's always more going on than just that. I sit here with this community in Halifax, but for as long as I have known about Great Tree, I've known that I'm also sitting with Great Tree. And now that I've been there, it's less abstract. I really feel it. But the fact is that even before I knew about Great Tree, I was sitting with Great Tree. Because when people take up this practice, this same practice, again, by definition, it means we're all making the same thing. We're making the same Buddha. We're making the same Dharma. We're making the same robe, whether we know who else is doing it with us or not. What excites me about forming a denomination, and I'll stop soon and then we can just talk about what that is. whatever questions people might have. What's exciting to me about forming a denomination is the recognition that we have always been doing this together, and the possibilities of what it means to do it together on purpose. To really recognize that my temple is training with your temple, which is training with the temple in Cedar Rapids, and training with a temple in Houston, and training with a temple in San Francisco, and training with a temple in Japan, and training with a temple in Japan long gone, and training with a temple that hasn't been built yet. What does it mean for all of us to really see who else is in the room? What does it mean for all of us to support each other in the making? How can we come together and do that on purpose in a different way? Not just in our minds, which is powerful and which is important, but actually with our bodies. There is a privilege in Japan, and I got used to it, which is that, you know, in any major Japanese city, if you walk for 5 minutes, you'll walk past a Soto Zen temple. They're just everywhere. And then if you're in my position and you're a priest, you could walk into any one of those temples and you could just participate, because they need somebody to ring a bell. And it's, everybody does it not exactly the same way, but it's close enough to the same way that if you went in and you said, could I help? They would say yes. And by the way, we do this one little part a little bit differently. And you say, oh, okay. Because you're not just a member of your temple, you're a member of all the temples. You're a member of this thing that is called Soto Shu. And you can be called into any of those spaces, and you're always showing up in your home, in your spiritual home. When I visited Great Tree, part of the joy of that, and it was no surprise, was how easy it was. I step in, and here are a bunch of people who understand this practice in the way I understand the practice, and they're making the same offering. And I'm just going to step in, and I'm going to add one more voice. I'm going to add one more body. I want everyone to have that experience of stepping in and knowing I already belong here because I already belong to this thing, this bigger thing, which on one level does already exist, but which I think we haven't really cultivated explicitly. It isn't as deeply felt as it could be. So I'm going to stop there. And I just like to open it up because I know people have questions. Even the word denomination is one that I think hasn't really been used much until really recently in this context. So I'll just stop, and wherever the conversation needs to go, let's take it there.
Good morning. I don't know if you can see me back here. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Daishin's friend, by the way. Yeah. No Fight Club reference today, but that's okay. Can you talk a little bit more what the mission of Soto Zen America is? How it's separating from Japan? I believe it's still the same thing, but it's establishing more of a denomination here in the United States, or North America, rather.
Right. So Soto Zen North America is I'm trying to work my head around this language of separating from Japan. Right now, there is a Soto Shu presence in North America that does administration work mostly around priests. So there's a lot of registration, a lot of bureaucracy that goes with priest registration, and to a certain extent, temple registration. Um, and that that office, which is in Los Angeles, has offered a lot of support, but it is kind of limited in what it can do. And and I think has always, or has known for a long time, that in some ways it was here to plant a seed and to get certain things rolling, but not necessarily to be here forever or to be here at the same level forever. So there's been talk for a long time about what it means to pass that baton, so that those of us who are here on the ground in North America are taking responsibility for things like priest registration, temple registration, in a way that doesn't rely completely on um, the generosity, quite frankly, but also the resources of Sotoshu in Japan. How can we form a kind of collaborative relationship with them so that we're still upholding what has been offered to us, but also maybe doing something that is a little better adapted to where we are. So part of that work has been to um, work on regulations for priests and temples that reflect a little bit more the reality here. There are a lot of rules in Japan that don't actually directly apply to what we're doing here, but also technically apply because we're under that. We're supposed to follow those rules. Um, so that's part of what we're doing. Um, but then there's also this understanding that if we do that, if we take that baton, we can explore opportunities that Sotoshu wasn't able to explore. And so this idea of moving toward a more temple-centered model as opposed to a priest-centered model, where we're really trying to bring communities into conversation with each other, where communities can be learning from each other and also kind of having access to the distilled wisdom of all these groups that have gone through, so that we're not all reinventing the wheel all the time, or so that a community in transition has a place that they can reach out to and say, our teacher passed away unexpectedly, and we want to continue with this path, but now suddenly the the tent pole at the center of the thing that we had built is gone, and we don't know what to do. Or um, the other version of that, which is we've built this place, it's important to us, and we know that in 20 years we're going to face a transition. So how can we best prepare for that? How can we be ready so that this thing that we built lasts more than a generation or two generations? So that's my understanding of what we're trying to do, is to make something that brings people together for the purpose of having something that can last and feel cohesive in a way that I think it hasn't up to this point. And I think while I was talking, um, uh, Io, hello. Io says, thank you for your presence. Seems like you're talking about, but not talking about SZBA. Would you please clarify? Okay, so Io, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you if you can clarify what you mean.
Yes.
Please.
Hello, everyone. Are you talking about SZBA? That's the first question.
No, no, I'm referring to we live in this world of acronyms. Um, the ASZB is the body that is supported by the Sotoshu in Japan, and then the SCBA is the other kind of completely independent organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then thank you. And so then my second question is, um, what is the need for both? Because it
Mm,
sounds like there are shared interests.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And I imagine there will be, as there are now, a number of the people who are in the ASCB are also part of SCBA, right? Um, Part of the function of maybe the central function of ASCB is about keeping a bridge, a clear bridge with Japan, with training resources in Japan, teachers in Japan, that kind of thing. that has not been the mission of SZBA. SZBA has been much more about exploring what's happening here in North America within Soto Zen. So I would like to think that at some point we find a lot of collaborative opportunities, but on a really simple level, there's a project that Soto Zen North America is kind of picking up from ASCD, which is about holding that connection that the SCBA doesn't need to. That hasn't been their work, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think important to say, and for some people that connection feels absolutely crucial, and for some people it does not, which is part of why you have people in one organization or another, and sometimes both. Camille, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much for this. This is lovely.
Thank you.
It makes total sense, everything you're saying to me. Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. I'm not sure it comes as a question or anything like that. It's just like things that came up for me. Hold on one sec, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it is a denomination, right? As someone who grew up Episcopalian, and I'm also a Soto Zen practitioner. Practiced with Brooklyn Zen Center up until a year ago. But yeah, and yeah, it's great, like, to just be able to go, like, to leave my Brooklyn temple and go someplace on the West Coast, like the Green Gulch or Sahara. Or recently, I was practicing with New York Zen Center, like all these different. Been to New Mexico, Playa, and it's kind of nice that they have like these soda elements, and I just fit in, like it feels like a family reunion or something. So even though I'm like coming from the outside, it's like I'm not a stranger. So I love that, and it makes total sense. Uh, I hope to ordain in 2 months, and I hope to also go to Japan, maybe to spend some time there at a temple there. This is all in the future, but immediate and not so immediate. Yeah, and I just, you may or may not be aware that the Brooklyn Zen, there's a painful split. I had to leave. I mean, been there for quite a while. And I'm just thinking, like, when you talk about what is, you're talking about community, I think, when you talk about denomination, when you talk about, like, offering incense, ringing the bell, like, I totally get that. You don't have to, it makes sense to me. It's something that's embodied, I guess, and that's one of the things I love about this particular practice. It's just, it all comes back to the body here and everything, like the insights, whatever it comes from the body. It's all from the body. But I wonder though, and I'm saying this in terms of like having witnessed that very painful break. Like maybe, I mean, I also grew up in Jamaica, so in the Caribbean, and so I went to religious schools. It was like a different, I think, in terms, there was like a sense of like religion as a practice, I guess, or like it's something that is embodied, and that you mentioned generosity, and you mentioned, I forgot the other thing. And that was just sort of, I think, just the way it was, I think. And you'd have different generations of people from, I still go to church, and the youngest member is like 4 months old. The oldest member is 105, I think. And that's just like, and it's all kinds of people, queer, black, white, whatever. It's like, and I wonder if maybe, you know, what you're suggesting here, like, needs to take into consideration maybe like the culture.
Mm.
And, you know, we talk about the precepts, which are important, but I wonder if maybe it might make sense to also emphasize the Buddha nature part,
Mm.
because I'm not sure if I don't know if that maybe that's part of it. Like maybe just culturally, that's just really really hard maybe for people to accept that. For some people, for me to accept that. Let me just put it that way. I wonder if that's just. I wonder if that's part of the part of this conversation. I have no idea. It's just a thought I had. Like um, um, that. Yeah, that's just something maybe to think about. Maybe that if that maybe we live in a society that makes it really, really hard to just accept your innate goodness, um, or that all is forgiven away, or whatever, however you want to put that, however you want to put that generosity that you mentioned. So
Right.
anyway, it's just a thought, but
Yeah.
really, really lovely to hear you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's really nice to meet you in this way. I'm, um, no, I love what you're saying, and I think that, part of what I hear you saying is that, obviously that there's something in those teachings around Buddha nature that really resonate with you, right? And that feel important. And so, um, I think that it's an interesting question, partly because I think that so much of what we're doing right now is kind of logistical. We're trying to um, we're trying to establish something that not only has a structure and a framework that makes sense to us and that hopefully makes sense to other people, but also ultimately will make sense to the IRS, for example, in their own understanding of what it means to establish a denomination. And so it's a lot of that level of thinking. Um, and so I really appreciate when the question that comes in is kind of not exactly doctrinal, but it's like, okay, but let's talk about how we're expressing the Buddha Dharma within this framework that we're making, and and how that invites people in. So that's just for me. I'm going to take that and and chew on that. Thank you. I also want to say though, because I really appreciate you referencing Brooklyn Zen Center and what you've experienced with that. Because I think in my own experience talking with a lot of people, a lot of communities have had difficult times. And what too often happens, I think, is that members of those communities who have really invested in those particular communities, they watch something crumble or unravel or become not what they thought it was, and then they feel like they don't have anything, there's nothing left there to support them. It feels either or. And part of my hope, if we can establish the denomination as this felt network, would be that someone who is going through something like that, A, might be able to reach out for help, but B, would feel, even in those moments of chaos or confusion or pain, I'm still part of this other thing. I'm still connected to all my fellow practitioners in this way, and I'm being witness to something here in this corner of it that is really, really hard. Um, but that anchor would be there. We wouldn't be unmoored, because I think a lot of people lose the practice when they lose their that clarity of relationship with community. And I would hope that um, we could change a little bit of that, make
Yeah,
that community part feel a little bit bigger.
yeah. I just want you to know that I do understand what you're saying, and I am tr- connected still in my. I get what you're
Mm,
saying.
mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So thank you for that.
Thank you. Daisho.
So good to see you and everyone. My question is about the logistics that you just mentioned, and that many of us in lay practice might have a lot of experience with nonprofit management and that kind of thing. Do you have advice on how we lay people can help you?
Oh, I love that. Thank you. um, Advice, no. But I think that, um, first of all, I love the question. Second, I think that all I can say, I guess, is that moment will come. It has to come because we need to do this the best way that we can. And, um, you know, there are, speaking as a priest, I have I have the skill set that I have, and then there are a lot of skill sets I lack. So I should not personally be responsible for certain things. Um, I'm happy to be in the room for conversations about certain things, but there are a lot of places where I really want someone more experienced and more solid in that thing than me. And I think that applies to everyone who's currently doing this work. So uh, yeah, something in my heart kind of lifts when I hear you ask that question because I think we want that great pool of resources, and the clearer we get on what we need, the clearer we'll get on how to reach out and ask for it. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Hi, Verena. Thank you for this. This is so just timely for me personally and what I'm working on and thinking about.
Mm.
It sounds to me the thing that keeps coming up for me is this idea of how similar it is in a strange way to like 12-step groups. Like
Yes.
that is the same throughout the world. Like you can go anywhere in the world and it's right there, but it's also going to have the flavor of where you're at. So like if I go to a meeting in Dublin, it's going to have that Irish flavor. So I think what you're talking about, I'm hoping I'm understanding this, and then I'll get to a question is like, how do we have Appalachian flavored Dharma? And that can include like the trees and the land and the people who are right here, but yet have that framework so that we can welcome people to say fold in, and supporting one another in that. So in that, what I'm wondering, the question that is open in my mind about like this kind of umbrella organization is like this idea of feedback loops. Like it sort of happens naturally, I think, in the 12-step community, like groups come and go, like some will be weak and then some will step in and it'll strengthen. But like there's this feedback that happens where you can kind of get like, a perspective on like the strengths and weaknesses and supporting one another and growing. I'm not even sure how to formulate the question, but I'm sort of imagining now this umbrella as like a place for it, almost like a resonator for feedback loops or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm very encouraged and interested in this.
Thank you. I love your question, and I love the frame of your work of your question because I've been talking about this for the last few years as I've kind of come to the same thing that the more that I talk with people about recovery, the more I realize that what we do is so in alignment with that experience, right?
Mhm.
And that there's a feeling of walking into an AA meeting and you see someone across the room and they know something about you and you know something about them, and it's an important thing, even if you don't know anything else. And now from there's a way to communicate, and then there's this an agreement, right? There are 12 steps everywhere. There's a common vocabulary around what's happening, even if it feels different here or here or here. And of course, the individuals are different. So I think it's such a useful way of thinking about it. Um, and yes, I think that part of what I'm excited about, and part of what I've enjoyed even in having these conversations with different sanghas, is I think because we've been very siloed, because we have all been attending to the very difficult work of building and maintaining centers, which is honestly at times overwhelming, even when you're just looking at the place where you are. Um, we don't necessarily know what people need, and we don't necessarily know what another group is going through. And part of what's exciting to me is that if we really establish this, if we start bringing communities together and bringing leadership of those communities together, for example, so that board members are talking with board members from other groups, I think we will discover things that we just haven't known, right? That the feedback will be, in some ways, there will be a lot of it that will say, oh, of course everybody needs that. But we might also start to see stuff that we hadn't registered, or where everybody who was experiencing that thought they were the only one. And now we realize that, oh, this is actually something that we should be addressing in a larger way, and really giving some consideration to. So yeah, I think there's I'm hoping that we, in building this thing, that we then suddenly discover a bunch of stuff um, about how we can serve and how we can serve each other that before was totally unknown to us. That's a very exciting prospect for me.
Well, Genjo here. It's good to see you. Thank you
Hey,
for.
Genjo, good to see you.
I have kind of the other side of Daisho's question, I think. I've been really thinking about, and we've been having conversations about this in different ways with different language here at Great Tree, but this been really sitting with this idea of neither priest nor lay person. And I'm wondering about how that, if anything you can say about that with Soto Zen North America, with a more temple-centric model versus priest-centric model. And of course, it's very alive in my life as a priest who also has elements of more you might consider more of a lay person lifestyle.
Right.
Just curious, anything you have to say about that?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And and I'm answering it as someone who has another job and has a wife and two kids, and, is also someone who has, I'm no longer a monastic. Um, I think maybe we downplay a little bit the degree to which we come out of a tradition that is not actually a tradition. We're a tradition of people who train as monastics, but not necessarily who live as monastics. Um, and I remember at one point, because I kind of I came into my relationship with my teacher at the same time that I came into my relationship with Tracy, who I eventually married, and these two relationships were building in tandem, and it started to feel like a problem I had to solve. And I remember sitting in my teacher's kitchen one time after Zazen, and we were eating breakfast together, and I said, I feel kind of torn here because we're talking about me ordaining, but I'm feeling like I want to build a life with this person. Um, and his wife came and stood next to him, and they both stared at me and they said, "We don't understand this question." for them, it was a non-issue. They weren't trying to wrestle with some sort of pure image of monasticism versus something that was purely lay, right? So I think we have a really solid foundation in that. That said, um, part of forming a denomination in this legal sense, which is going to support us a lot, but is a really interesting challenge, is that we do have to be able to establish um, for government eyes on some formal level, this is what it is to be a priest. This is what it means have to have the trainings, to have the qualification to be recognized as a priest within the denomination. That, I think, is relatively easy because we already know a lot of what that is. I think for me, what's more interesting is I don't think we have given enough attention to what it means to be a lay practitioner in North America, even though almost all practitioners in North America are lay people, and almost all communities would be identified as lay communities, even if they have a priest um, serving in a role there. We are largely a community, a mahasangha of lay practitioners. And one thing that I would like to see come out of this more clearly is a real exploration, not just within sanghas, but among sanghas, of how we understand lay practice and how we hold up lay practitioners more. Because I think in too many cases, there's a feeling, and I know I'm not making this up because I've talked with countless people about it. There's a feeling when you come into Zen, especially in certain communities, that all paths lead to ordination, right? That if you do it seriously enough, then eventually you start dressing a little bit differently, and then eventually you shave your head, and then eventually you go through those levels of ordination, and that's kind of where it naturally goes. But historically, that's not where it goes. That's one very specific track, and it's a vocation, and it's a vocation of serving everybody else who is doing their track. And I don't think we talk enough about what that track is. So I'm really hoping that in my lifetime, I can be part of a big, big, big conversation about what it means to practice as lay people in North America, not just in a way that is kind of a simplified imitation of priest practice, but as lay practice with its own integrity and its own sense of path. I do think some places have figured that out more than others. But on the whole, I think that tension is really, really, it's real. And it's something that we as North Americans, if we mature into the practice more deeply, I think we will move beyond it into something else. I hope that answers some of what you're asking.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'm conscious of the time because I think the schedule said that we end right around now, but if there's another question, I'd be happy to.
I just want to mention something that I'm thinking about, and apparently Thich Nhat Hanh has already put words to it. And you know, because I'm thinking about this denomination, Soto Zen North America, as a Mahasangha, you know, a larger connection. As you say, we've all been busy getting our temples up and running, and now this is an opportunity to kind of connect with each other and support each other. But Thich Nhat Hanh says the next Buddha will be Sangha.
Mm.
And I think that just nails it.
Could you say more about what that means for you, Tejo?
Partly what it means is creating kind of an awareness of each other. And as you're talking about, you know, the lay kind of fleshing out what is the lay practice, and creating a space for that kind of in the larger picture of Soto Zen in North America. As you know, I've been part of the Association of Soto Zen Buddhists, ASCB, since 1997, and it's always been a priest organization, you know, which is great. But as this is developing, as Soto Zen North America is developing, I'm realizing that it has not really included our sanghas. You know, I always came back from the meetings telling people what happened at the meetings, but then it kind of ended there, you know, and it serves the sangha in the sense that we've received a lot of trainings and a lot of opportunities to figure out how we are all connected, how we can be all connected. But I think it's so important to start looking at sangha as Buddha. And it kind of speaks to what you were bringing up at the beginning, you know, what Dogen Zenji said, that Dogen Zenji says that lay practice and priest practice is the same practice.
Yes.
Yeah. How do we recognize that? How do we not create this kind of hierarchy that a priest, everyone needs to be a priest in order to be part of this, and yet make the opportunity, provide the opportunity for lay practice to be, to have some depth. One of the things that happened at Minnesota Zen Center is that because we were all lay people, we all had the various roles that you would have in the monastery, because it makes sense. It creates a nice, structure, kind of. And I was thinking about that as you were speaking, and I was thinking, yeah, when I went to Japan to the monastery, I knew how to do all that stuff because I'd already done it. And I mean, I think we need to acknowledge that that is happening in lay practice in America in order to keep that kind of flow going, to have that, to have a tried and true structure that works for a community is a valuable thing. And so not to have that be confined to priests.
Yes. Thank you for all that. I was really, I don't know at what point I read it, but when I first encountered the idea of the fourfold assembly, it really changed the way that I thought about some things, because the teaching around the fourfold assembly was that, of monks, nuns, laymen, and lay women. The Buddha said that, the Buddha Dharma only survives if we have members of each one of those quadrants that can transmit the Dharma. And I think we haven't given enough consideration yet about what it means for the lay part of that equation to be transmitting the Dharma. There's a way that we understand it in a priest context, and it's a lot of ceremonies, and there's a room, and it's read, and there are documents, and it's one thing. But there's this other thing as well that I think is really important, and so much of our work is going to be there. I really, again, so much of my influence is because I was in Japan for a long time. I think a lot about my teacher's temple, where there's a lot of activity, and there are a lot of really dedicated lay people who participate in the temple activities. And my own guess, if I think about them, is that probably not one of them has ever been concerned that they should be getting ordained in order to somehow have their practice be valid, or that there's some other step for them to take. I think they feel very solid in where they are as lay practitioners, that they have an identity around that, and they have an understanding of that within the temple and within their large community. And we have some work to do on that, but it's good work. It's exciting work.
And my experience too in Japan is that it's very different from American Zen, in that people come to the temple here for zazen.
Right.
And that's not the case in Japan. And I think we have a great opportunity to create some sort of deeper experience. I mean, of course, taking care of the temple is part of it, but where do we start? And that's something that Americans have embraced. My friends have a temple, and they started a weekly sitting meeting, and no one came. This is in Japan.
Right.
No one came. They were sitting there themselves, and they were very disappointed about that, But we do have that enthusiasm for meditation practice in America, and it's such a way of deepening our understanding of life and our understanding of our relationships with other beings. And Sangha, awareness is another way of creating that depth.
Yeah.
And that helps us in our everyday life.
Yes. And again, I think that's such exciting ground to be exploring, because on one hand, what an incredible development, an incredible gift that for the most part, people are coming to our centers for Zazen or through Zazen. And also, what other ways can we be bringing people into the Dharma that are not Zazen, right? How can we explore that other side of it, where there's another door to open? That's part of the question I feel when I'm in Japan is, how many doors could we be opening for people to have some authentic experience of coming in and being part of this making and part of this giving away? I think there are a lot.
It's a little past 11, about 11:10. So it'd be best to wrap up.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Koun. We end by giving back the merit.
Okay.
Okay?
It's call and response, so please respond if you could help to respond. May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings and bring peace.
Koun, I want to thank you for coming, and I also want to thank the Mahasangha that has shown up this morning for this talk. I'm really heartened by the interest and the enthusiasm. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend.
You too.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care. See ya next week. Thanks, Tejo. Thanks, Sangha.
Same with Camille.
Yeah,